So welcome to the second part of the class for November the 17th, PIN428 on Tuesday. Let's wait for the participants to arrive.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Hi, Professor. I'm sorry. I can't attend the second period because I'm on another class. I have
Sure. I'm just inviting everyone as one time, and then I'm alright with and hopefully we will meet again next week, right?
On Friday.
On Friday. All right.
On Friday. Yes, I'm sorry, Professor.
All right. No. Don't be. See you then. Welcome back from the break. Just taking care of this one invitation that I'm sending, in case someone else would like to come to this session, right? I really need to find out about Johnny, if Johnny is here, or maybe he's in a different section. All right. And I think I'm missing Javier. Okay, Montenegro. Okay, so I think I invited everyone in the section. Good. So what we have here is, I think, the poem itself. And I'm moving down to the questions. Did you have time to go over the comprehension sections? The comprehension section, sorry?
Yes, mister.
Okay, so would you like to take one? Would you like to choose?
I would like to go with the answers, any of the ones from the 7th till the last one.
Sure, pick yours. Pick yours, and then someone else can take another one, please.
I'll go with number 9.
Go for it. Excellent. Number 9. All right, so the idea would be that once you know which one you're going to answer, you could do the same that Javier did, which is to type the number in the chat box. Okay, there will be one option, and then if you haven't worked with any, at least say it very clearly, so we can move on to the following topic. That's the idea, right? So, Javier, at any moment, you can start with number 9, please. All right, then, so we can continue with the same order. I guess Javier with number 9, and then probably Carla. You could go on with the first one, and then Jocelyn with the second one, and then Camila with number 4. That's okay with you? So whenever you want, Javier, you can start. All right. I cannot hear you, Javier. Are you having issues with your microphone?
So sorry, mister. I was away a little because this group, the group of the class, has 2 conversations going, 2 reunions. It's pretty odd. I've never seen it, and there's one of our classmates in the other one. I try to reach her, but I think maybe she's also away from the microphone, from her computer. I don't know.
Okay, so I went to the other meeting. I met Javier there and Consuelo, and I'm going to invite Consuelo here, Daniel, just in case he wants to. Mariana, Barbara, just in case they were in the same situation. Okay, so Javier, whenever you want, you can start with number 9. I think I'm sharing. I don't know. I think I'm not. I think I am. I wasn't, but I am now. If Javier cannot start with number 9, we could have Carla start with number 1. Is that okay, Carla?
Yes, Professor, I don't have any problem.
Thank you so much for that. Whenever you want.
Okay, so the first question is, what does the poet ask God to do in line 1? So as we were saying before, the poet is referring to the whole Trinity, like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and he's asking God to attack his heart, like to touch it, and in order to change his, I don't know, his thoughts, his way of thinking. And I didn't realize well when I was reading this poet, but it makes sense what you said about God was like the form of the black black, how was the word,
Smith.
blacksmith. Yes, I didn't realize that, and now it makes a lot of sense. And yes, that is my answer.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, it takes a while to digest some of the words which we might find in different contexts, but I guess that's the idea in metaphysical poetry, to recreate these very unlikely images or ideas, put them together and make it work. Right? That's an interesting job, interesting skill. Jocelyn, would you like to take number 2 now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, number 2 says, what according to the poet has God done up until this point? So according to the line, God tried to call the poet, or to call him in a softly way, trying to fix him. And according to what I understand, between line 1 and 2, he doesn't want to be called softly. He wants God to hit him in order to enter to his heart. It was I don't know. It's a very interesting poem. I liked a lot. And now when you explain the lines, it makes sense to me.
I'm glad because it takes a while. For me, it took a while. I had to go over some extra reading, assigned reading, in order for the poem to make sense to me, and also to know a little bit about the biographical aspects of the author. I think that also clarifies why he is using all these religious images combined with other elements, right? So that's that the idea of these multiple possibilities or combinations makes metaphysical poetry like opera. I mean, you love it or you hate it. It makes sense to you completely or it doesn't at all. That's that's the thing, I guess, about metaphysical poetry. Camila, would you like to take number 4?
Okay. Well, question number 4 says, what does the poet compare himself to in line 5? And he says that he owes obedience to another. Who do you think he is referring to? Well, first, he compares himself to a town who has been taken or that has been usurped. And I think that he might be referring to the enemy's forces of God, which are usually associated to the devil and all the bad things that are associated with him. For instance, sins, the worldly desires of that humans have and are not considered good in the eyes of God's eyes or the eyes of God. Yeah, that is my answer.
Thank you, Camila. It's interesting to pay attention to the possible interpretations, right? We are told that it's God's enemy, but to decide which one is God's enemy, that's totally up to us. For some, it might be sins, right? For others, it might be the reason. At some point, religion and the scientific or the truth being sought after by scientific methods were sort of enemies. So sometimes, when scientists were trying to discover whether the Earth was flat, some of them were condemned, right? So at some point, the Bible and science were considered to be enemies, were considered to be telling different truths. And these truths, right, were not compatible. Or we can say that being married to God on one side was opposite to quotation marks live in the world or desire or all kinds of worldly pleasures or the pleasures connected to sex or the flesh. Those were like the enemies of a more pious and religious life, right? Or a life of meditation, where on one hand we have the spirit, right, and all the cultivation of the spirit through meditation, through getting closer to a higher level of conscience. And on the other hand, or on the other side, we had the body, right? The human body taking care of the physical aspects of your life, right? Or being connected more to worldly pleasures like eating, right? And having fun, basically. So the idea to define which is God's enemy or which might be taking you astray from the righteous path, from leading a very ethical life. That's something for you to consider, right? Something for you to decide. Sometimes poems are not telling you what exactly to understand. Some aspects have to do with deciding or interpreting. Whenever he thought about a town, an usurped town, had the idea of these castles that were under siege, right? That were being attacked, all surrounded by the enemies, and the castles had to surrender at some point because they were left out without supplies of food and water, right? And fire within the walls, and the being hit by really large rocks. So this is the idea that I got, at least from an usurped town, a town that belonged to someone else, and he was aching to be rescued. He was really desiring for God to come and reconquer him, as he were a territory, as if he were a town, a piece of land, or a castle, right? In order to be regained by spiritual forces. That is an interesting idea. Do we have any other volunteers for Javier? If you are ready, you can go and take number 9, because I don't see any more numbers in the message in the chat box.
Yes, mister. I'll go with number 9.
Great.
Comprehension. How, according to the poet, can God make him free? Well, as it says in the poem, take me to you, imprison me, for I, next line, except you enthrall me, never shall be free. According to this line, I feel that the author can refer to two ideas, initially with the idea of imprisonment, initially. This might be referring to the act of severing the person from other things, like you mentioned, like you, Mr. mentioned earlier, like being separated from other ideas or desires, being and thus being only in the presence and under the caring of God, rather than being punished for him, as the poem is being constantly implying ideas of some violence. This may refer to something more soft, a more soft approach to God, but with the concept of imprisoning. So it's a forceful, carefully separation, and this is the imprisoning of the mind, of the ideas and feelings that as well you already mentioned. And secondly, the word enthrall has two very different meanings. One is being fascinated by something, and the other one is being enslaved by something or someone. But in some point, these two concepts end up being in the idea that the person is under control of a specific object or subject or something different. Being fascinated or being enslaved by it. In here, it is the freedom that can be reached through being dominated by God, and this may be the idea of God wills or his law. So maybe by being under that reality and that realm of ideas of God, is that the poet feels he is going to be this like free. For example, it can be like being released of the ignorance of God may set him free, as he now knows the truth.
Right, interesting concepts you were developing or elaborating, and it's true. Imprison someone requires an act of violence, right? It's denying someone's freedom, a very violent act itself, because essentially, right, we have free will. Free will implies that we are able to make our own decisions, and that has to do with also where we move, where we stay, where we sleep. And to request someone to imprison you, that's an interesting paradox, right? Imprison me in order to become free. It's an interesting marriage. And let's take a look at any other messages in the chat box. Okay, Javier, Carla, Jocelyn, and Camila, the only I would say, how do you call this? Participants, right? That wanted to take a look at the task. So let me show you a very interesting image. Okay, do you see this image?
Yes.
Okay, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Duke.
Anybody else has any reaction? Maybe this is a larger image. Okay, so not a very pleasant view, right? It's a being, right? It has a purpose but we want to stay away as far as possible from a flea, right? I don't know anyone who feels really comfortable with the presence or the view of a flea. And you know, it's this connection that we make with flea and maybe diseases. Do you make that relation, or is it only me? Like beings carrying diseases whenever they bite. Well, I make that association. I don't know if you make it with when you think of when you have seen or uh, a foot of a flea, right? But the diseases are always connected with fleas. But in the case of a poem, it's such a daring deed to take a flea and to compare a flea with someone else, something else, that it's not this blood-sucking creature, but that somehow represents spiritual and a sexual connection between the poet and the mistress, because essentially this is a persuasion poem. The author is trying to use these lines in order to persuade and to talk the mistress into sexual action, basically. So he says in the first line, mark, but these flee. And pay attention to this, right? And marking this. How little that which thou deniest me is. It sucked me first and then sucks thee. And in this flea our two bloods mingled be. Thou knowest that this cannot be said, a sin nor shame nor loss of maidenhead. Yet this enjoys before it woo, and pampered swells with one blood made of two, and this, alas, is more than we would do. Okay, so the author is making us focus. It's saying, pay attention to this flea, right? It's a and you what I'm asking you, it's so little. Pay attention that the flea bit me first, so it has my blood, bit you then, so it has your blood, and within the blood, within the flea, my blood and your blood are mingled. Okay, so what is it the poet trying to do in this line of reasoning, this arguments he is using to convince this mistress? He is saying that this flea contains a sort of a union, right? Union between these two blots, and somehow they should feel united as well. Okay, he's not stating anything yet, right? Not so clear anyway. And then in the second stanza he says, "Oh, stay, 3 lives in 1 flea spare." 3 lives in 1 flea spare. So the flea contains, his blood, which represents his own life, her blood, which represents another life, and the life of the flea itself. So the author is stating that at least 3 people live in the flea at this time, where we almost nay more than married are, because you know he's arguing that the blood represents a sort of union, as the 2 bloods are connected, and it's he's referring to marriage in general, right? And this flea is you and I, and this our marriage bed and marriage temple is. So pay attention to the connection he's making between a flea and marriage, a marriage temple, and a marriage bed. Right, he is comparing the flea with both a marriage bed, right, as a married institution. Though parents grudge or be very, very upset, right, and you were met and cloistered in these living walls of yet, though use make you up to kill me, let not to that, self-murder added B, and sacrilege, 3 sins in killing 3. So in this second stanza, he is using, remember that he is trying to convince this woman to have, basically to have sex with him. And he's referring to this flea as a vehicle of their own blood containing lives, right? Their lives. And it's whenever we think about blood being mingled, there's this linking or connection between people, right? And probably he's also referring to sex, essentially, right? So that's why he's using this this metaphor, this conceit of taking this flea as a vehicle of love, as a vehicle of being married. Already, he already feels married to the mistress because of this combination of blood, right? I know it may sound like a disgusting topic, but this is the line of reasoning that he's trying to make here. And he is asking not to kill the flea, not to murder the flea, right? Because he wants this concept or idea to survive long enough. In the last stanza, right, he says, "Cruel and sudden hast thou since purpled thy name in blood of innocence." So the mistress killed. He can see that her nail is purple, right, filled with stain of blood. So the mistress killed the flea. So he killed an innocence. I mean, she killed an innocence. Wherein could this flea guilty be, except in that drop which is sucked from thee? I mean, what's the purpose of her action if the only thing that flea can be guilty of is that it sucked one drop of blood from her? So why she shouldn't have killed her, because that's the only reason for this event, right? For this end. Yet thou triumphest and sayest that thou findest not thyself nor me the weaker now. 'Tis true, then learn how false fears be. Just so much honor when thou yieldest to me will waste as this flea's death took life from thee. So essentially, the last argument is that there's no reason, there wasn't any reason to kill the flea, but yet she killed the flea, and they don't feel any weaker. There's nothing that changed them from the ones that they were before when the flea was alive. So as nothing happened, maybe they could take that as a sign, and they could, lay together, because nothing will happen for them. Just like nothing happened because the flea was killed. Okay, so you may say it doesn't make sense. You may say very interesting comparisons. You may say, why on earth someone would choose a flea in order to convince a mistress or a maiden or a woman in order to get intimate, right? To get into a sexual relationship, right? Well, that is the intricate elements or complex elements of metaphysical poetry. That elements which you might think it's impossible to make a comparison with these two elements are connected somehow in these conceits, and it requires one very skillful writer to do so, because it's not easy, and it doesn't make sense. So it's a complex metaphor, the one that we see here, that it may work for you or it may not. That's That's a good thing about this. This is the interpretation area. So we're not talking about black and white. There are maybe some gray areas in which you might like some ideas, some expressions, but in general, you may think that other ideas are not really comprehensible, right? So remember that the Flea is one of the most famous poems by John Donne, along with "Better My Heart," and the idea in this second one, the Flea, is using these Flea along with several arguments to convince a woman to fall into temptation. And the idea is that since the Flea bit both of them, and their bloods are already mingled, so that is just one step below intimacy, right? Sexual intimacy. So as it already happened, he is using these arguments to convince her to go beyond that, as they are already connected somehow through the Flea. The Flea already became this vehicle, this marriage bed. So since it already happened that they feel this, or he feels that they have this connection, so why not the next step, right? So that's a very daring, a very interesting poem. And if you try some sort of comparison or metaphor in which if you try to compare, for example, because it's really not difficult to compare someone's heart with a rock, right? I mean, it's a very, very common comparison. You hear poets saying that his heart was as hard as a rock. Okay, but think about someone's heart being compared to I don't know, something that maybe could be to a tree. I don't know, to a tree. His heart was as strong and deep as the roots of a tree. And they may be developing that idea because, tree roots are very strong. Usually, I mean, if you remember movies or if you have seen tree roots, you see that they go really, really hidden on the ground, and the tree becomes very strong, particularly when you have seen floods, lots of water, rivers washing down areas. The trees are the ones that stay there. People can climb trees and remain they may not be taken by the flood. So I think about any impossible elements in which you can find a common way to compare them if you work very hard with it. And that's something that was done by metaphysical poets, right? These conceits, because at that time in this particular circle of poets, it required a skillful management of language. It required highly educated people that had knowledge, usually had a knowledge of Greek. Sometimes they had a religious background, just like Donne, right? They were like high priests, or very well connected with the church. Some of them were very aristocrats or were very, very rich, so they had a really high education. And it made sense at this time to make this comparison. It sounded you were very, very smart, very intelligent if you were able to produce this type of literature. Okay, and the perception of literature changes. The perception of what we consider to be a good poem a regular poem or a bad one changes. Classical poems, though, tend to outdate others, right? Tend to live longer and tend to be appreciated by more than one generation. Classical works of art are classical because basically they talk about universal elements, right? So many human beings from different generations or different periods of history may relate to the same ideas. And so one good exercise, and with this one we're finishing the session. I'm sorry, so talkative today, but you know that whenever you want, you can interrupt, right? Whenever you have questions, you may ask. One exercise that I want you to pay attention to is, because it may come up in it may pop up in a test, or in an evaluation, in a forum, or in an interview, is a comparison between a sonnet, a Shakespearean sonnet, to be more specific, right? And a metaphysical poem. The idea would be that you could consider the structure, right? That you can consider the topics, that you could consider. And when I say structure, I don't only refer to the rhyming pattern. Also refer to the number of stanzas and the number of lines, and specifically what is developed in each one of those stanzas. Also, the topics that are most common for and the type of language used in Shakespearean sonnets and metaphysical poetry. Also, maybe the purpose of because the purpose of the Shakespearean sonnet was somehow different from a metaphysical one. Conceits were not. I mean, metaphors have been used by poets different times, but conceits, which are these highly elaborated but highly unlikely comparisons, were sort of part of the metaphysical poetry. So I propose you that exercise. Make a comparison. If you're familiar, are you familiar with Venn diagrams? Let's see if I can. Probably you are. Venn diagrams look like this. The ones on the right here, like two circles intersecting, right? For example, this one, tomato, right, or tomato, and apple. Each one has specific characteristics, right? But in the center, or in the middle, in the intersection, there are elements that are in common, right? Fruit, round, smooth-skinned. Okay, so on one side you can have the Shakespearean sonnets. In the other circle, the metaphysical poems or poetry. And in the middle, you could have elements that are a part of both types of poetry. Okay, that is a suggestion I give you in case you want to understand much better or the complexities, and specifically, as I mentioned before, maybe you can mention some authors, topics, structure, figures, figures of speech, or literary devices that are used both in Shakespearean sonnets and metaphysical poetry. Okay, this is not a homework. This is a suggestion, because I remember somehow that at least once or twice these years, I have used a question like that, like compare these two such and such, and refer to the similarities and the differences. So I think visually, a Venn diagram can help you to to get the idea. Okay, is this clear? Is this suggestion clear? Do you understand what a Venn diagram is? How can you can apply to this task?
Sorry, mister, what was the question?
The question is, do you understand the suggestion that I'm giving you? The contrast and compare Shakespearean sonnets and metaphysical poetry and see in which way they are similar and in which way they are different. I'm not giving you homework. I'm just saying it's good to make this comparison or Venn diagram because it can help you understand the main characteristics and in which way there are some similarities. And also, whenever you are preparing for a final evaluation, like a holistic one, in which many questions may appear at random, like an interview, a Venn diagram can help you study because it's a visual tool that can help you realize elements that that are shared or that are in common. Okay, so I'm going to write it in the chat box, but like I said, it's not a task, it's a suggestion. Shakespearean and metaphysical poetry. Shakespearean. Because there's an evolution here, not only in terms of literature, and we have seen only, we're seeing or studying 2 poems by John Donne. There are also some elements that we're not covering connected with prose and plays, particularly plays. The theater changes these days. The influence of the Protestants in this period is huge. So it will be very interesting that you take a look at history these days. I think I'm going to upload a couple of links connected with history, right? And the influence of the Puritans these days that affects not only society, right, but also, well, literature for some is a mirror of society. So whenever you read some literary work, you may understand how society was at a specific time. So there's this very close connection between society and literature. But I'm going to upload this link to the LMS so you can take a look at some historical events that took place that can help you understand all the changes in terms of literature, in terms of plays, of poems, and in terms of prose. It's we're about to finish. I mean, we're about to get to 1 o'clock. So let's finish this session. Thank you for joining the session. I hope that more things were clearer for you. And I'll see you on next session next week.